My name is Joe Lurie. Thank you for coming here. I work on the M365 product team. I'm a senior product marketing manager. I'm up here with my friend
Aaron Farmer. I work in the product group as well on Windows updates and deployment.
And we're going to walk you through today some of the changes to servicing, what servicing means in Windows 10, and some of the enhancements we've made to our servicing stack and to updates. We have you for the next 60 minutes or so feel free to, we don't have any microphones, but if you have questions, we'll try to catch them. It's pretty bright, the light, so we may not be able to see any hands, but try to ask you questions if you have them. All right, so as a refresher, we want to first bring you through what exactly we mean by servicing. So with servicing, or let's go back before servicing. Before servicing, we had our 3 to 5 year in-place upgrades, not even in-place upgrades. We weren't very nice to you when it came to in-place upgrades. We made you do really a wipe and load to go from 2000 to XP, from XP to Windows 7. From Windows 7 to Windows 10, we do want you to use in-place upgrades. We'll talk about that over the next few minutes. And then from Windows 10 to 10, keep doing Windows upgrades, in-place upgrades. And that's really what we mean by servicing. Windows as a service. Windows as a service. Because Windows is getting better with each product release. And we're going to talk about how we do that Windows as a service. We're not going to talk about all the new features, but we will talk about, because we couldn't. I have a slide of new features, though, that I'll be showing you. But we'll talk about how to get current with your Windows, in your Windows journey. So why do we have Windows as a service? What happened? We have IT users, help desk staff that want the proper tools to help their customers. We have users that want the most productive applications. They want to be able to use Office 365 Pro Plus. They want to be able to use Windows 10 and all the new features. The features that came out in last year, or 2 years ago now, in 1703 that we called Creators Update, they like those 3D capabilities that we gave. So we want users to be able to be more strategic, more productive with their jobs. We want the security that comes with that, and IT demands that security. And so that's why we have Windows as a service. Windows as a service gives you, and you can see, I'm not going to read this slide to you, but you can see the marketing people desire for innovative ways to engage customers, and the CISOs and security officers to ensure a secure ecosystem. This is what Windows as a service offers to our user base, to our consumers, to our enterprises, to our CISOs, to our CMOs, our CEOs, CXOs. They get all the new benefits of the modern management, of the modern security story. So some things to bring up here is today, if you were to get a new job, and I'm not asking any of you to quit your current job, but if you were to get a new job today and you walked in and you saw that where you went to have your interview, they had a Windows 7 device, a Windows 7 workstation, maybe you happened to notice that they were using Word, 2010, Word 2007, and you haven't had your interview yet. Is that a place that you might stay and actually have that interview, and maybe you want to go and actually work at a company that's using Windows 7 and Office 2007, Office 2010? Most of us would say no. 80% of millennials surveyed, and this is a survey done not by Microsoft, but actually by Dell, 80% of millennials surveyed said they won't even interview at a company that is not keeping current. 60-something% say, I think it was 62%, say they'll leave their job if they're not given the tools to keep current and to be more productive. So as an employer, you want to give your users the most productive environment, to let them do their work securely, let them do their work creatively, lower the total cost of ownership. We have internally, again, so maybe you're using Teams for collaboration and OneDrive for business, so you can, again, have a real-time collaboration, store your documents instead of storing them on your hard drives themselves. Externally, again, using something like Teams, which allows you external collaboration as well, but while keeping everything secure and keeping it all manageable, allowing for things like conditional access when you're using Azure AD and Intune to manage your devices, or our cloud connected management, including SCCM. So why stay current? How many of you, just a quick show of hands, how many of you in the room, either as a partner, helped customers, or as a customer, upgraded to Windows 10 and maybe to 1607, and so you're happy you got 1607, but then stayed there? Oh, only a couple. That's nice to see. How about like 1703 or 1709? You got there, but you haven't done any upgrades yet. So that's a little bit more, but still only a few, so that's also nice to see. Why stay current? You can go to Windows 10, and you can, so go from Windows 7 to Windows 10. It actually was a nice, easy in-place upgrade. Again, we weren't very nice to you in the past, but we're very nice to you now when it comes to that. So get to Windows 10, but then getting there isn't enough. You need to keep current on Windows 10. Some of you know, and we'll talk about the semi-annual channels and the Windows Insider Preview channels, the long-term servicing channel. We'll talk about these, but we want you to keep current. We want you to keep upgrading, maybe not every 6 months, maybe once a year is good. Do it with the fall, the 1709, 1809, what will be 19H2, 1909. Stay annually if you can't do semi-annually, but keep current. Keep current because of all the new security threats that are always coming out. All the security threats that our advanced threat protection is protecting against. And we protect against that with our servicing upgrades. So we have improved management, the cloud-connected management with SCCM and Intune. Autopilot for quickly deploying these devices. Autopilot gets better with every servicing upgrade as well. Enhanced security against modern threats, we just talked about that, and access to the latest features and capabilities. I keep mentioning Office 365 Pro Plus. O365 Pro Plus, and this isn't a session to talk about that, and John has a session later on today to talk about that. But O365 Pro Plus, always keeping current with new features like design ideas, keeping current with the new Excel features and the AI that's built into Excel, and Power Pivot that's all built in. So keeping current gives you access to all of these new features and capabilities. So some problems that we've heard in the past. It's our ecosystem, we're too fragmented. We have Windows XP, we have Windows 7, now we have several versions of Windows 10. The reduced quality users aren't running what we test. So what do we test? We test a fully updated operating system. In the past with Windows XP and with Windows 7, how many of you deployed every single patch that we sent out? You deployed them all. So we test a fully patched operating system. When we deploy patches, when we deploy applications, when we update applications like Office, we test those on a fully patched operating system. In Windows 7, we allowed you to say, okay, Microsoft has 25 patches right now. I need these 3, I don't need this one, this group needs this one, and allowed you to cherry pick which patches were being deployed to your user base. Now it's a single patch. And that single patch, and Aaron will talk about that later on, it is getting smaller, because I know some of you are saying, yeah, but it keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, but it is getting smaller and smaller and smaller now, and Aaron will talk about that. But the reduced quality, we had users aren't running what we test. There's no consistency. Now there is, because it's a single patch on all your devices. So staying secure with our servicing. We have a slide here. I'm just going to actually go through the animation to show you between releases, when you have Windows XP to Windows 7, there's a period of time between those releases where malicious users are attacking against what's open, and we patched it as much as we could, as fast as we could. Oh, didn't mean to go that far. So, but now you can see with Windows 10, there is no really a gap between releases. That gap between releases is fixed on Patch Tuesdays, and we also have our C updates as well. So we have that protection gap has been narrowed down. It's been limited because we're constantly updating that operating system. We're constantly updating O365 Pro Plus to make sure it's always secure as it can be. And I've already teased you with this slide. How many of you here remember Spectre and Meltdown? It was only a year ago. Still only half the room remembers this? Were you not in IT a year ago? Were you not computer users a year ago? So Spectre and Meltdown, this really changed the game. Obviously, Windows 10 had servicing before Spectre and Meltdown, but Spectre and Meltdown really made IT CISOs and IT admins really take a look at always staying up to date. Windows 10 happened to have been patched against Spectre and Meltdown before Spectre and Meltdown if you had all the patches leading up to it. Now, this was not, to be clear, this was not a Windows issue. This went way deeper than Windows. And this affected more devices than just Windows devices. It was not a Windows exploit. But Windows was able to patch it. There were some systems that couldn't be patched. Why? Because their antivirus vendors had to send out a patch first. We had one customer say to us it was going to take them 18 months, so they're probably still doing it, to patch against Spectre and Meltdown, because they had to get all of their third-party patches in from their AV providers and everyone else that had patches before they could be fully patched. It was going to take them 18 months to protect against this. Staying current, staying up to date with our servicing helps protect against Spectre and Meltdown. And really, as I said, to be clear, this was not a Windows thing. Also, to be clear, it's not the last time we're going to see an exploit like this. Later on during the week, today, tomorrow, we have a session on desktop analytics. And Zach is going to go over stuff like, in the desktop analytics dashboard, you can actually see which devices have been protected against specifically Spectre and Meltdown. And there'll also be, I hope that we don't have any more exploits like them, but when we do, those will also show up in that desktop analytics dashboard. One thing to understand when we talk about servicing and we talk about patching, and again, Aaron has a whole 25 minutes or so on patching, but one thing to really set the stage for that is, you all know that we have our Patch Tuesday patches. Those are the second Tuesday of every month. Also known, if you read some blogs, they're known as the B patches. So February Patch Tuesday was 2B, and July Patch Tuesday will be 7B. So we have our B patches. Those B patches are our quality updates. The quality updates have things like security and non-security updates. What we don't do with the quality updates, we don't provide any new features. We don't provide any new APIs. We do security fixes and non-security fixes. They also include everything from the prior months. So because we have a single patch, that means instead of, how many of you remember in Windows XP finding a device in a closet somewhere, you plugged it in, and you had 50 updates, it would reboot several times, then you had 50 more updates as it kept catching up, and then 50 more updates, and it would take you days to get it fully patched. Does anyone remember that? More people remember that than Spectre and Meltdown? So now it's a single patch that includes all the patches before it. The quality updates have gotten much more efficient. So that happens on the B Tuesdays. Then we also have feature updates. Feature updates happen semi-annually. They happen somewhere around March and somewhere around September, October, December. So they happen every 6 months. These feature updates give us the new capabilities. They give us the new APIs. They give us the new features. Feature updates also include, you can see the new features, APIs, security, reliable rollback capabilities. We can now roll back from one version of Windows to the previous version if necessary, up to 60 days. The default is 10. Back when Windows 10 first came out in 2015, it was 30 days. And our customers were like, 30 days is too long. You're taking up too much of my disk space with your Windows.old folder. You got to lower that down. So we made it 10 days. And then when we made it 10 days, our customers were like, 10 days is too short. Sometimes we don't run an application for 2 weeks. You need to make it longer. But the other customer said, no, but I don't want it to be 30 days. And some admins said, can you do it immediately? And others said, no, don't do it immediately. And we're trying to listen to all of you. So what we did was we said, okay, there's a sliding scale. Using a DISM command or using an MDM policy, you can do a sliding scale from 2 to 60 days. The default will be 10. If you want it to be, it will never be immediate unless you set your own scheduled task for that. But you can say, I want to roll back very easily, but if I know I don't need to roll back, I can say, give my users 2 days to test this out, or give my users up to 60 days to test this out. So nice rollback capabilities, and of course, our insider preview. Inside a preview program allows you to take a look at Windows about 5 months before a version comes out. We start previewing it. So 19H1 should be coming out soon. So 5 months ago-ish, we started releasing Insider Previews for 19H1. So is anyone here on the Insider Preview? All right, that's nice. Anyone on Skip Ahead? So the difference between Insider Preview and Skip Ahead are really the Insider ring that you're on. Insider Preview is looking at 19H1 right now, 1903. Skip Ahead is either looking at 19H2 or even up to 20H1, looking at some new features that will be coming out in 6 months or even a little bit further along than that. Some of these features may not make it into the operating system. So that's why we have these Insider Preview builds, so you can test them out. All right, I promised you a second ago that we were going to have a slide that shows a lot of new features. Now, we can't have a slide that shows every new feature, and when I show you this slide, you'll understand why. This slide shows from 1511 on to 1809. I introduced myself. I'm in the marketing department. It's my responsibility to put this slide together. I'm in the process of figuring out how to move everything over so that I can get my 1903 column done. The 1507 column's already come off the board because we didn't have room. So it starts at 1511, but there was a 1507 before it. And of course, we don't expect you to read this slide. And it doesn't show every new feature, but just look at that last column on your right, the 1809 column. All those features that came before it, plus all the new features that are in bold white above it. In 1903, somehow I have to figure out how to get either a bigger slide, smaller font, or a new design of the slide. I was actually working on that this morning, to be honest with you. All right. So, more productive, cost-effective. Windows 10 is the most secure, the lowest total cost of ownership, most productive version of Windows. And I know it sounds like a marketing term, but it's actually true. We've had Forrester and Gartner, and I told you Dell, and there's a lot of reports that came out actually proving this. Organizations save an average of $7.2 million in total cost of ownership by moving to the modern desktop. That modern desktop, I would love to say that modern desktop is a Surface device. How many of you are using Surface devices as your primary device? The entire room, that's awesome. I love that. Surface devices actually offer you the best experience when it comes to something like Windows Autopilot. And the reason for that is it comes with a clean image. You won't find things like trial software semantic and things like that. So anyway, most cost effective. The lowest total cost of ownership. You see infrastructure and licensing, modern desktop, you'll save $5.3 million. Oh, let me go back to my earlier thought. But modern devices are also from our OEM partners like Dell and HP, Lenovo and Asus, and you name it. Those are all modern devices as long as they have like a TPM 1.2 or preferably 2.0. If they have an SSD hard drive. And why do we want to have an SSD hard drive instead of any other hard drive? Is because my device, I'm from the States. I don't know if you can tell from my accent. I'm from Boston. I don't know if you can tell from my accent. I don't know if you all know the Boston accent here. So my device, when I was in Belgium last week, I was in the Microsoft Office, so I had decent connectivity on Wi-Fi. I got one of my skip-ahead preview builds on my Surface. From the time I hit the restart button, I hit restart and I hit stopwatch at the same time. And because I'm using Windows Hello, because that's also part of modern devices having some kind of biometric login, from the time I hit restart to the time my machine started up and had my desktop and Outlook running, it was 9 minutes and 52 seconds. The entire update, because I'm on a modern device with an SSD drive, and we're using modern servicing stack, the entire update took less than 10 minutes. And I'm told that they were surprised it took that long. It should have taken me somewhere around 6 minutes. So whether I'm going to look into that or not, I'm happy with the 9 minutes. But if it's supposed to be 6 minutes, your users would be even happier with that. So that's part of that more productive devices. How long does it take you, let me ask you this now. How many of you during your servicing upgrades, if you've done servicing upgrades, had your users say, it's taking me too long from the time I restart to the time I can actually use my desktop? The average, 82 minutes? I think you have a slide. Aaron has a slide that's going to show. The average was 82 minutes. I had it in less than 10. And less than 10 was still too long. It's supposed to be less than 5, less than 6. We're told through our telemetry figures, we've had some devices that came back up in 3 minutes. So we'll show you some of the change we made to the servicing stack to make that happen. How am I doing for time? All right. So we have a customer, when we talk about the lifecycle management, this is typically what happens with the lifecycle. When we put out a project, we'll just say Windows XP to Windows 7. When there's a project to go to Windows 7 from Windows XP, there's a lot of stuff you have to do before you make that first upgrade or that first wipe and load. You have to test your environment. You have to test your applications. You have to make sure your hardware is sufficient for this. What else? App compat, internal readiness, user training. You need to make sure your drivers are all up to date. Again, maybe you need a new version of SCCM. You need to, whatever you need to do, you need to check your group policies, right? Some of that stuff you have to do anyway. We had a company, a customer, I was not around Microsoft at this point, or I was, but not in this role. So it's a story, secondhand story at this point. We had a customer that got their devices, it was, I'm going to say 250,000. I'm not sure how many, but somewhere around 250,000 devices that were running Windows XP. They went XP to 7, and it took them 4 months. 250,000 devices they upgraded in 4 months. And they were really happy about that. And that's good numbers, right? How many of you would say that's a good number? If it takes you 4 months, so they're doing 60,000 devices a month, 15,000, start doing the math backwards, 15,000 a week, 2,000 a day, right? So that's good numbers. The problem with those numbers, it took them 4 years to do the OS readiness, the network readiness, the app readiness. So even though they upgraded in 4 months, it actually took them 4.5 years to get these upgrades done. That's the problem. Because right now with Windows servicing, you have 18 months of servicing if you are on the XX03 editions, or if you're on Windows 10 Professional or Home Edition. And you have 30 months if you're on the XX09 editions, or you're on Enterprise Read-to-Use SKUs. So if it's taking you 4.5 years to get all that OS readiness done, you're already 3 versions behind where you need to be. So you don't have time to use all the new features because you're always going to be behind. We need to move that slider over a little bit because too much time is being spent on that side of the slider. We want to make that easier for you, and we have made that easier for you. With our Windows Analytics, which is currently available today, Windows Analytics will help you assess your internal readiness. It'll help you assess your applications. It'll help you assess your drivers. It'll help you assess if there's not enough disk space on the devices. With Desktop Analytics, that's coming out soon, and you'll have a session on Desktop Analytics at some point today or tomorrow. When we look at Desktop Analytics, you'll be able to see other things, like, is this machine, how often has it crashed? Do my Excel macros, will they work in the next version of O365 Pro Plus? So we're reducing the time it takes that OS and app readiness and app compat, giving you more time to take advantage of all the new features. How do we do that? How do we know that these applications work when you open up a Desktop Analytics or Windows Analytics tenant? We know from the same way auto manufacturers know that a car is working or not working or is going to break, the same way that all the different manufacturing things that we take advantage of, we don't even realize it. There's telemetry everywhere. Our diagnostic data will give us that kind of insight. We know that SAP version whatever works on Windows 10 1809 because we have 100,000 devices globally using it. And then we may have to go to SAP and say, look, there's 100,000 devices globally using this. Can you please just put on your website that you support this version on Windows 10 1809? So sometimes we have to go to the ISV and say, it's working for 100,000 devices at a minimum. Can you please just open up a support statement? Just say that it works. So our telemetry. Something else our telemetry, our diagnostic data, our data feedback tells us. We had, going into 1803, I want to say, we realized through our diagnostic data, and this is more consumer than enterprise, but it's still worth saying, we realized that there were a lot of devices that were going through the upgrade process and then rolling themselves back. And so our AI showed us that a specific, and I'm not going to say who the company is, but a specific antivirus vendor on a specific version was on all of these machines. So what we did was we pulled that update off of all the consumer edition Windows 10 devices that it was targeted to go to. We pulled it off if they had that version of that software, of that antivirus. We worked with the antivirus vendor to create a fix. They deployed the fix. We then redeployed Windows 10 to all those devices. The users they didn't have any idea that we did any of that because it upgrades overnight while they're sleeping. So they didn't realize it was upgrading and rolling back, and then they didn't realize it even upgraded after the fact. So our diagnostic data and our AI helps us make sure that applications work and that Windows 10 will just work. We're really certain that Windows 10 will work feature upgrade to feature upgrade, or Windows 7 and Windows 10 upgrades, that we have a desktop Aperture program, and I'm not here to talk about desktop Aperture, but we have a booth in the expo that will talk about desktop Aperture, if you have any questions about it. So our diagnostic feedback lets us know that Windows 10 is ready for your devices. Now, for management, we still want you to use Configuration Manager, SCCM. SCCM as a tool is being used by a lot of companies. How many of you in here either use it or have customers that use SCCM today? I actually expected more hands than that. So some of you aren't raising your hand because you're shy, but it's okay because it's dark and no one can see you. So go ahead and raise your hand. SCCM we're still developing for it. We're cloud connecting it now, so it works with Intune. It also works without Intune. So SCCM, Intune, Windows Update for Business. These are some tools to help you deploy and use all these feature upgrades. We've made changes to the client, the servicing stack in Windows to make sure that like my machine can upgrade in under 10 minutes. Download optimization. We talked a little bit about how the patches are getting bigger. Through our delivery optimization, through express updates, we've made that easier for you as well. I've been talking about this a little bit without using the phrase here, but we are the IT administrators for 650 million Windows 10 devices, and those are in the consumer space. When we upgrade a consumer device, we don't know what's on it at first. We don't have a gold image for that device. We couldn't possibly have 650 million gold images. We don't know what patch level those devices are at. We know that device, from what our telemetry tells us, should work on Windows 10. And so we send out Windows 10. Windows 10 will automatically roll back. If it doesn't, we'll get that data. And somewhere along the line, there may be a help desk ticket, there may not be. I have a slide for that. I'm going to run a little bit late, but I do want to show that slide. How do we do it? We do it with the increased stability or compatibility. The application compatibility, we focus on backward compatibility. What does that mean? It means we want to make sure that your applications not only work, we want you, if you have to test your applications, we don't want you testing it on 1809 if that's your next version. We want you getting an insider build and testing it on 19H1 at the same time. So that when you do your in-place upgrades to 19H1, you know that it works. That's what we do. We test. If you call the help desk and say, I need a fix for an application, I need a fix for an application. I have a problem, I have an issue with this application, can you please deploy a fix? We first test that fix on the next version of Windows before we actually answer your ticket. We'll say, yep, they're right, we can recreate this in 1809. Let's go ahead and create it in 19H1. Let's create a fix for it in 19H1 and backport it to 1809. Why do we do that? Because we want to make sure that when you upgrade from 1809 to 19H1, that fix still works and it doesn't break anything. So we focus on backwards compatibility. I'm going to go to the other side of the slide. I'm not going to read this slide to you. Again, data insights, new technologies. We prioritize ISVs and IHV partners and only upgrade when we know that you're going to have a positive experience. We talked about that a little bit already as well. I'm going to skip over a couple of these slides, again, in the interest of time, because I want to get to a specific slide about how we can help with all these upgrades. By the way, when I talk about the upgrade, we're talking about doing in-place upgrades when we look at consumer, and when we look at Microsoft internal, we're all doing in-place upgrades. The impact to the enterprise, where I want to focus on, 1803, the latest data we have is going from 1709 to 1803. We don't have any data yet getting to 1809 because it's still so new and a lot of you are waiting for the semi-annual channel targeted to drop, and we all know by now that we're dropping the targeted anyway, but you're waiting for us to do that officially. So we don't have any data on 1809 upgrades yet. We were able to upgrade. Again, we're looking at consumer and enterprise, and the enterprise in this case would have to be using Windows Update, not SCCM for their updates. But 236 million machines upgraded in 45 days. Before that, it took us to do 236 million upgrades. It took us 95 days. We cut that number in half and then some. Now, if you were to do that math out, and you don't have to because we have a graph to do that for you, that's an average of 5.6 million devices a day. And I mean, we did 10 million devices. I don't know if you can read that from the back, but 9.7 million is the highest spike. 9.7 million devices in one day. And we have the same issues that you have. We have to think, when we deploy Windows 10, what's going to happen to our help desk? How can I do 1,000 upgrades a night if I have 5 help desk employees working? I can't do that. So I'm going to do 100 instead. And that's what our average customers are saying. I don't have the help desk staff to support it. But we can see that we did 10 million a night without that help desk staff. We have the rollout data here shows RS4, RS3, so that's 1803, before it's 1709. We did the average of 5.6 million. Now, even though 10 million in one night is impressive, it's not as impressive as this. What this bar chart shows you is the number of Windows 10 devices, that's the blue bar in millions or hundreds of millions or something, and then the orange line near the bottom that's going down, that's help desk calls. So even though we're installing more and more Windows 10 devices every night, our help desk calls are going down and down and down with every month that passes. So you can see Windows 10 upward trend, help desk calls downward trend, because we're making sure we have that smooth experience for you. I am running low on time, so I want to make sure that that Aaron has plenty of time to talk about Windows updates and the changes to the servicing stack that we're making. So these slides I'm pretty sure are available to you. So we're gonna.
It's okay, you're inspiring them.
I'm inspiring them. Wait till you hear about the updates, how we're making changes to the updates. Anyway, so this is marketing numbers. That's why I'm gonna skip over it. It's just marketing numbers. And I am in marketing, and I'm happy to skip over it. All right, so services ready enterprise. So when we look at services ready, we're talking about app compat. We're talking about everything that we're talking about. Initial application compatibility, innovation adoption. If everything should be done, I mentioned at the same time. When you're looking at application compatibility, we don't want you just testing on 1809 because that's what you're going to. We want you also testing on 19H1. Or don't just test on 1803, also test on 1809. Always start testing on the next version as well, because eventually you're going to be there, and eventually you'll have to test it, so you may as well test it in parallel. We have a couple of things that can help us out. I talked to you already about desktop analytics a little bit. I'm not here to sell you on desktop analytics. That's what Zach Dvorak's job is in another session. Ready for Windows and ready for M365, ready for Microsoft365.com and ready for Windows.com. These two websites allow you to check an application's compatibility on an app-by-app basis. I want to know if this specific application, again, SAP, GUI, whatever version, is compatible with this version of Windows. And you can do that on a case-by-case if you're not using any of our analytics tools. You can use this. The ISVs use this, and our diagnostic data uses this. Again, it's ready for Windows.com and also ready for Microsoft365.com. I've talked about Windows Analytics, so I'm going to skip over this. When we look at Windows Analytics, when we look at things like Desktop Aperture, we're not trying to take away from anything you're already doing. You still need to define your app inventory. You still need to know what applications you have. That's what Windows Analytics does for you. You also, some of those are going to be off-the-shelf applications or commercial off-the-shelf applications, COTS. Some of them are going to be ingrown applications. The ingrown ones, the in-house developed, we may not have a lot of data on that, to be honest with you, but we do on the commercial off-the-shelf. And you can start saying, okay, I have these thousands of apps, but these are the commercial off the shelf. I know Adobe's got a support statement, and I know whatever has a support statement, so I don't really need to worry about that. And so you're down to just testing hundreds of applications, or even fewer than hundreds of applications. Through Windows Analytics and our own Windows Analytics, our own desktop analytics, we know through our AI that application is going to work. I think, yeah, here we go.
Yep.
So I'm going to hand my slider over. Thank you for paying attention. You'll see me in a few minutes as well, because I'm not really going anywhere.
He's good. So hopefully Joe convinced you of the value of staying current. I'm going to talk about how we've made staying current easier. There's a few different sections. We talk about reducing the bandwidth impact of updates. We talk about improving the user experience, and then making it easier to diagnose when things go wrong, because sometimes they go wrong. So when we talk about the bandwidth impact, a lot of times in the past, I know personally I've focused a lot on the download size, and so updates are really big, and we hear that feedback a lot, both quality updates and feature updates. But there's also just the pipe, the bandwidth pipe, and even if an update is like 500 megabytes instead of a gigabyte, you still have a lot of other traffic going through the pipe, so we don't want to disrupt that. So I have a few more slides on how we're reducing the download size of each updates, both quality and feature updates, and then how we're using things like delivery optimization and networking technologies like LeadBat to make the bandwidth more accessible and keep your business critical traffic flowing. So with quality updates, in the past there's always been this trade-off. We have these cumulative updates that Joe talked about. They're getting bigger and bigger over time. Every time we release a fix, it accumulates onto the old package and it grows. And we always said there's this technology called Express that you should use to make the downloads smaller. And that's actually what we use for all of our consumers. It's this differential download technology. The problem is, if you're hosting the content on a distribution point or in WSUS, the Express payload is orders of magnitude larger than what the clients are downloading. And so you have to make this decision. Do I want to host gigabytes of data just to make my PCs download less, or do I want to host less data and give that to everybody? So in 1809, we introduced a new package format that should eliminate that decision. It's a slightly larger download for the PC, and we're talking a few megabyte or tens of megabytes, but it's, and I have a graph on the next slide that compares the two, the before and after, but the hosting is significantly smaller. So it's easier to distribute to different distribution points and cache on your various satellite offices. And the other benefit is Express, you used to have to manage your baselines. So we would only publish a payload that was small for the most recent devices. With the new payload format, it's applicable to any baseline. So you can see here in a before and after, the graph goes up for the content that you're hosting and and you get the smaller download size. With our new package format, as of 1809, they're both small. So no more decisions, just small downloads. Looking at feature updates, so these are the every 6 months or sometimes yearly updates that you take. We've also introduced a smaller download size for those, and it's using some of the same technology that we use for our quality updates. And the intent is to ship only the difference, the things that have changed in between the releases. And it's using a framework called UUP, and there's some benefits of UUP, which are also we keep your language packs and features on demand through an update seamlessly. In the past, that was always a process that had to be managed either with task sequences or...
how many of you actually use language packs? We're in Europe, so I have to imagine every hand's going to go up. Really? Not every hand's going up?
Nice. And how easy was it to manage those?
Yeah, when you go from feature update to feature update, how easy it is to keep your Dutch or your French or your German language? You got to reinstall it, right?
Yep.
So I would expect an applause when we say that you no longer need to reinstall your language packs.
Yeah, so UUP lets you keep those seamlessly. You don't have to do anything. It just happens automatically across the update. And then there's a lot of other integration with deferral policies and other ways to manage the update experience. So today, if you're doing updates from Woo or using Woofbee, so if you're connecting to the internet to get your updates, this all works automatically. That's just built in. And then coming soon in spring 2019, there's an on-prem preview for WSUS and Config Manager. So the next piece that we'll talk about, delivery optimization. And this doesn't shrink the payload, but this makes it so that you don't have to go to the internet to get bits. It's a peer-to-peer content sharing mechanism built into Windows. It works with all of our content that's hosted on Office 365 Pro Plus, store apps, Windows updates, and it's a way for, once the content is in your network, to share it across different PCs. There's also going to be, in Windows Analytics, reporting that'll show you some stats. So, for example, and I think this is from our updates that we use in Microsoft on a day-to-day basis, but you can see the distribution. Rather than all the devices getting payload from our external CDNs that are hosting the content, it's getting it from peers. 69%, I think, is what that works out to.
Yep.
And so that works for all the different quality updates, feature updates. It's built into our update stack. And then the last piece that we'll talk about is LeadBat. Fun name to say. It sounds like a baseball bat made out of lead, but really it's low, I'm not going to, I can't remember the acronym. Something like that. But really what it is if your pipes have a lot of business critical traffic, whether that's video, conferencing, phone calls, whatever it is, and then an update comes along and, multiple gigabytes potentially, hopefully less now with our new UUP technologies. And then your updates start to slow everything else down. So your YouTube videos stop playing or your conferences stop, you start to stutter. And that's because the network doesn't know the difference between the traffic. So what LeadBat does is it allows the network to prioritize the update traffic as lower. And if it starts to impact the network performance, it can dial back the download of the low priority traffic. This can be enabled on your SCCM distribution points using PowerShell. There's a blog post here that you can find more information about.
People have asked me about LeadBat. Isn't that what Bits does? This is like Bits on steroids. This is really, it's Bits v10 or something. You are required to have Server 2016 and Windows 10 to use LeadBat, or Server 2019 as well, but minimum Server 2016. But it really is a huge impact on network savings.
Yep. And you don't have to do anything on the PCs. The payload is already classified as low priority, so you just enable it on the distribution points. So next we're going to move into some improvements we've made for the user experience. Because, once you've got the update in your network, it can be kind of a pain to deploy them, and your employees might be suffering from them. And I think Joe talked about a bit about this with 82 minutes of downtime. So people should be familiar with this screen, I would expect. And you could probably sit here for an hour in the past. So what we've done, and Joe alluded to this before, is we've been making dramatic improvements to the amount of time it takes to finish an update. Starting in 1709, so that was 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, we've made significant progress in reducing that. And these are average numbers. If you have a modern device like Joe's Surface laptop here, the numbers are much, much smaller. Yeah. But going from 82 minutes down to 22 minutes on average for a feature update in 1809, I believe.
Yeah,
it's 1903.
In 1903, yeah. It's important to note that this depends on where you're coming from. So if you're coming from 1607 going to 1903, you won't see those benefits. But if you're coming from 1809. So the stats that we show, when we update Windows, we update the servicing stack in Windows. So you have to start from 1709 to start seeing those benefits. Start from it. So getting to 1809, you may still see the 82 minutes depending on where you're coming from, but getting off of 1809 is going to be so quick for your users. Yeah,
and I mean, since I work on the update team, I take updates pretty much every day at work. And so having to sit through an update, and I pick up my laptop, I run to a meeting, I open it up, and it's on this screen. It's a huge pain. So I love this feature. This is my favorite feature. And then once the update's done, who's seen this screen? After you've logged in, you have to wait again. sometimes minutes. So this is, after I log in, we call it the flashing colors, even though it's blue now. In Windows 8, it used to be a rainbow of colors, if anybody remembers. Now it's just blue, changing different shades. So we've made some improvements here, and these are improvements that have actually been available to consumers for several releases now, but now it's available for enterprise customers as well. So we call it ARSO, Automatic Restart Sign-On. What this does is, while the update is completing, or after it's completed, during the boot up into the new OS, we will automatically log you in. There's that screen in the background. We will process all of the things that we were doing before, which was preventing you from logging into your PC, and then we'll lock the device. And so this is only going to work for you if you have a TPM 2.0, Secure Boot, and BitLocker. But what it's going to do is, if I grab my PC, run to a meeting at the beginning of the day, open it up, I'm not going to have to sit through 5 minutes of flashing colors. You're going to get to work immediately. So the next improvement that we've made for upgrades, it's about disk space. And disk space is a huge problem. So we talked about updating 650 million devices. A lot of those devices have disk space issues. So updates are large, they require a lot of free space, and we're trying to make that smaller, but fundamentally we're downloading a new OS, so we need space. What we're doing, and we've learned that not only do we need the space, we're competing with Windows is competing with itself for space. So we have a lot of data, caches, page files, things where we just need big blocks of space, and then on top of that, we need space for updates. And not only are we competing with ourselves, we're competing with the users. So they've got movies and documents and photos and whatever else on their PC, things that they can't clean up, things that they don't want to delete. They may not feel safe, even if it's in OneDrive or Google Drive or whatever, like they don't really want to delete that off their PC. So it's really difficult to free up space. So what we're introducing, and there's a blog post here with more details, but we have this notion of a storage reserve. And the storage reserve, it actually classifies some of those caches and page files that I talked about before and puts those in a location that we can use for updates later. And then we also reserve space to guarantee that we can download the update and complete it. I will say, if we limit the size of the reserve, and if we consume all of that, Windows will keep running as normal. We don't suddenly blue screen and say not enough reserve space or anything like that. But this is really increasing the reliability of our updates, especially on low disk systems. One caveat, this is right now only available on 1903 clean image machines. So either a new manufactured device or a device that you've clean installed Windows onto. So the next topic, and I think I'll buzz through the next ones. I've got about 10 minutes left, but we want to leave some time for questions. But we've introduced pre and post processing support. And so this gives you a way, if you're using SCCM, you might be using task sequences to control when different steps happen. And in the past, you lost that if you were using a servicing flow. So if you're using Windows Update, Woo for Business, or servicing throw.
And the other thing about using a task sequence is, if you're using a task sequence, you lose all the quick updates. It won't take you only 9 minutes to update a machine if you have a task sequence. That one line item in the task sequence will take you 9 minutes, but then you have all the other line items before and after it. So you may not actually see the benefits of the servicing stack updates if you're using task sequences.
Yeah.
So that's why we introduced this.
Yeah, so this is a way for you, even for Windows Update-based updates, to run custom commands at various phases, and they're all listed here, before and after the update, to do the configurations you need to do for your customers. So this hopefully gives you parity with what you would have with the task sequence, but allows you to use the benefits of a servicing-based update flow. And then I think one of the last topics we have is diagnosability. I face this problem a lot, and I work on the update team, but often we'll get an error code like 0xC194011 or something like that, and we expect you and me to know what that means, and that's impossible. Like, we're always changing those, and you kind of have to go to forums or maybe the Microsoft TechNet to figure out what that error code means. And even if you figure out what the error code means, driver not found, something like that, which driver? Which one specifically failed and how do I fix it? I don't actually know what to do. So we have a tool, it's called Setup Diag. It reads the logs from a failed machine, either on the machine itself, or you can take the log off and run it remotely. And it'll use rules that we defined, and we're continuously adding new rules to present you with a more human-readable resolution or diagnosis, and then hopefully a resolution. So in this case, it parsed the logs, figured out this AMD Radeon driver happened to fail, and we recommend you remove it or update it to resolve the experience.
Yeah, one of the nice things about that is it doesn't just look in the setup log. It looks through the Panther logs, and it collects data from each of the Panther logs that's necessary to diagnose that, where before that, we had to use CM-Trace or something like that, look for red bars in CM-Trace. Or how many of you use Notepad to analyze your logs? Wow. We have some updates to Notepad coming in 1903, by the way. Anyway, so it actually takes all the Panther logs. It goes through all of them to give you that holistic view of okay, this is a specific driver that's needed. Oh, by the way, it's on Windows Update.
Yep. I think it even looks at crash dumps, too. So it's pretty cool tool. It's on, there's a link there with documentation. It's available to download on Download Center. We encourage you to check it out. So in terms of diagnosis, so once you've diagnosed it, you may find that you don't have an immediate resolution. So maybe there's an app issue, and you can't really go to the ISV and ask them to update the app and then wait around and wait for the app and then update all those PCs. So you need to roll back the device or uninstall the update. And in the past, we had DISM commands that worked for quality updates, if you use DISM. What we've done recently is we've added support not only for quality updates, but for feature updates. And then we've also added CSPs so that via MDM, you can uninstall these updates. So you can do it all remotely for any of the updates that you're deploying. And so this is really going to help you mitigate the impact if an update fails, or even if it doesn't fail, if it's introduced app compat issues or there's driver problems or anything, this will allow you to remotely roll back your devices. And I think that's all the content I had.
What's the next one?
What's next?
You skip over that. All right, so I did mention Desktop Aperture. The Desktop Aperture program, again, we have a fast track booth out in the Expo Center. This is where I'm going to end. I'm going to talk about this for a minute, and then we are going to open up for questions. We have about 5 minutes left when I'm done talking about this. We are so sure that your applications will work. And I talked about that earlier. We know that they're going to work from Windows 10 to Windows 10 because we make sure of it. By the way, we do our update stack. And we work with the ISVs to make sure that they will make sure that they work from Windows 10 to Windows 10. But we're also sure that they'll work from Windows 7 to Windows 10, or from Office 2010 to O365 Pro Plus. And we're so sure of that, we've created an insurance policy for you. If your application doesn't work as expected or as needed, you can, visit Microsoft.com Fast Track. Go out to the booth. Go to email desktopaperture@Microsoft.com is I think the actual email address. They'll have that email at the booth. And say, I have an application that doesn't work. Now, what we found is out of the 4,200 calls that we've gotten in, first of all, the majority of those emails and things are like, oh, I just wanted to make sure someone was really there. I didn't believe this program existed. I didn't know if I was going to get a reply email or a reply phone call. I didn't know that you were really there. But we did have some actual tickets, and most of them were, I mentioned before, calling an ISV and saying, this works. Can you please put a support statement out saying that it works? We know it works. Just please put out a support statement. Well, working with them, if it doesn't, working with the ISV, if it doesn't, to help provide a fix. Sometimes we have to say to a customer, oh, the reason that doesn't work is because in Windows 7, and again, I'm going to expect a lot of hands to come up, how many of you in Windows 7, your users, are admins on their device? Really? 5. I have a room of about 800 people. 5 of you in Windows 7 have admins as your end users. That's actually fantastic if it's true. So But in Windows 10, you don't, right? In Windows 10, you've really locked that down. So an application may not work because it was running as an admin user in Windows 7, but not as an admin user in Windows 10. So we'll help you fix that as well. Sometimes it's a reconfiguration. Occasionally, it does require us to fix something in the OS or in Office or something like that. And when I say occasionally, I'm going to say this happened to 0.12% of the tickets that we got in with Desktop Aperture. This was a figure that I heard last month, so I don't know how much has changed since then. But 0.12% of those tickets required some kind of a recode that we broke, whether it was in Office or in Windows. 0.12%. That's it's almost nothing. I think it's 4 out of 4,200 or something like that. Because again, in Windows XP to Windows 7, we weren't very nice about the way we did those upgrades, and a lot of applications didn't work. So to be honest with you, we get why you're hesitant to do in-place upgrades. We understand it because we felt the pain and we heard the pain in the past. But now we've made those changes so that the application should work. And if you find an application that doesn't, we're not going to inventory your applications for you. We're not going to test your applications for you. That's not what Desktop Aperture is about. It's about you finding the applications that don't work and using us as that insurance policy. It's a free service. And right now, we actually have enough bandwidth because we don't have a lot of calls on this service that if you had an application, let's say, and I'm going to ask it now, how many of you still have a couple Windows XP machines in your environment? We have more XP machines in the environment than we have Windows 7 admins, just for the record. If you have an application that works in Windows XP that doesn't work in Windows 10, that's not what Desktop Aperture is about, but we have enough bandwidth right now that will probably take that ticket as well. Is there any questions about or are there any questions about anything that Aaron and I talked about today? We have about 3 minutes.
And we will be in the booth, M365
Yeah,
booth
we'll be in the
later
M365 booth throughout the day as well.
One-on-one.
Yeah. So the question is Aperture available if it's a Windows 10 to Windows 10 issue? Yes, it is. There is some caveat. So here's a caveat on all of these. If you're using an older version of McAfee, Symantec, SAP, and they have a new version, you just don't want to pay for it. Their new version works on Windows 10, you just don't want to pay for it. We can't fix their old version to work on Windows 10 just because you don't want to pay for the new version. So we can't step on the toes of our ISV partners. But generally speaking, if it's an up-to-date app that doesn't work in version of 10 to version of 10, yes, we will fix that as well. Thank you for your time today.